Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Crystal, what's on the show today?
Well, we got some new polls coming out of Iowa, just as all the candidates head to the iconic Iowa State Fair. We'll dig into that. And we're also going to ask the question, when do the Biden gaffes, when is this a thing we actually need to talk about?
Well, we're going to talk about it now. All that coming up today on Rising.
What are you looking at, Saagar?
I'm taking a look at conservative bias amongst social media. There's a report out from Politico in recent days that the White House is mulling an executive order on Silicon Valley's alleged anti-conservative bias. This is something that has captured the minds of right-wing media and many of my brethren on the right. And it's something that actually greatly annoys me because it ignores the actual fundamental questions and the forces behind how this happens. Is there bias in Silicon Valley against conservatives? Yes. A lot of that bias actually entails bias of enforcement, as in when somebody who is liberal breaks their terms of service, they are not censored, whereas when you are a conservative, you are censored. There are so many cases of Google falsely labeling the California GOP, for example, as being related to Nazism. I don't think anybody in Google consciously made that happen. It's more about the fact that they let it stay up for a significant period of time and that it takes an outcry from the GOP to get it fixed, whereas if a similar thing were to happen to the Democratic Party, that it would get fixed immediately or a Google person would find that. But I digress. All of these things that we're concerned about are a consequence of bigness. Now, what does that mean? Bigness is an economic term about the size of a firm and its market penetration and how much power it has in our economy. What conservatives are concerned about bias, what they're actually concerned about is bigness. Because all the problems that we have with social media companies, elections, journalism, anxiety, addiction economy, all of these things are a consequence that Facebook and Google are the number one or number two sites in this country, that they control massive power, that they have access to 2.2 to 3 billion people, their data, their daily use patterns on the internet, which is a fundamental part of our daily life. And the bias conversation belies the bigness conversation. If the Trump administration actually wants to get serious about bias, what they should be doing is get serious about reviewing the Department of Justice's antitrust policies, about how we enforce antitrust, how we think about antitrust. Current guidelines say that you have to prove there's a direct negative benefit to the consumer in terms of price. But is that something that we should necessarily be looking at? If they drive the price down on something significantly, but also destroy accompanying social institutions and industries, is that something that affects your institutions and your community? This is the way and the new questions that we should be asking. So to all of my conservative friends out there, yeah, bias is a problem. But you know what the real problem is? It's bigness. And so, Crystal, that's just a pet thing that really annoys me because it's not, bias is what the conservatives are concerned about. You know, liberals can be concerned about the election interference. Journalists can all be concerned about, sucking ad dollars away from this industry. Parents can be concerned about the fact that their kids are spending too much time on Instagram. What does all this have in common?
Right.
What's the actual core problem? That's what the administration should actually be looking at and trying to solve.
You are very right. Because when you fixate on bias, which, by the way, I disagree with your analysis of.
It turns into a political football question.
What it says, exactly. What it says is, I only care about this as it affects me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And the fundamental problem is the massive amount of power that these companies have. I personally don't see them as liberal or progressive. I mean, I see them as pro-corporate. Mm-hmm. And I think that they have been, in a lot of ways, afraid to enforce their rules as it applies in particular to white supremacist ideology because they're worried that that will be perceived as conservative bias, which is a whole other thing in and of itself. But you are absolutely right. And the other piece here is that there is somewhat of a bipartisan consensus around the fact that these companies are too big. Elizabeth Warren saying they need to be broken up, other Democratic candidates with other ideas. This is like an area where if there was an honest, good faith effort to deal with the problem, you might be able to put together a bipartisan coalition, but not if you're just going to be like outraged about Diamond and Silk being shadow banned or whatever.
Exactly. And if you turn this into a sole discussion about bias against Diamond and Silk, guess what? Nobody's going to vote for you. Nobody's going to vote with you. And you're going to lose.
And you're not going to get anything done.
Yeah.
Next on Rising, The Debrief with the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack.
We examine the potential federal response to El Paso and Dayton shootings and efforts by groups on the right and the left to get past the Senate's gatekeeper, Mitch McConnell. Our conversation next.